Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that's Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Season 1, Episode 1, Asterix. I'll explain that in a minute. It's called The Man Trap, and there will be spoilers. The reason why there's an asterisk next to the episode number is because Star Trek is notorious for having a few different episode orders. We're going by what's on the Blu-ray, what's on Netflix, that sort of, because it's the most common one now.
Yeah, it seems to be the accepted default order.
Yeah. The other confusing part, though, is that some places will put the unaired pilot first and put this as episode 2. So, we're not doing the unaired pilot, mainly because there's an episode in season 1 that actually uses most of the footage from it again, so we didn't want to watch it twice, essentially. So, this is episode 1. As far as we're concerned, this is episode 1. Moving forward, here we go. And I'm looking at IMDb right now, episode 1. So, all these different places, all in agreement.
Yeah, this is it. Doesn't matter what it was before. This is it now.
Yeah, and there's no ongoing plot, so it doesn't really matter all that much anyway.
No, just for purposes of you watching along.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you're probably going to be watching it either on the Blu-ray, DVD, or Netflix. Those are your options, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're doing Star Trek. This is obviously the first one. This is already cancelled. This is our new thing where we review an old show. We're going to be doing one per week of Star Trek. Might speed up a little bit if we get some quiet months in the summer or something like that. But we're going to go one per week. And just to give you some context, I've seen the first 2 seasons of this before. Connor, you've seen a season and a half.
Yeah, season and 2/3.
Semantics. Well, a lot of this original series will not be fresh to us. Well, it's been a long time since I've watched it. I got the gist of this one like when we've seen like the main plot device, but until then I had no idea what was in this one.
Yeah.
Like the title didn't give it away to me.
Yeah.
Some of them will, but a lot of them won't. But yeah, the idea is that eventually we will go into next gen, and then eventually.
Which I've seen nothing past this. I've seen the new movies, and the first season and a half or so of this, and nothing in between.
I've seen 2 seasons of this. I've seen 1 season of Next Gen, so I've still to see all the good Next Gen because it doesn't get good until season 3, from what I hear. And I've seen all the movies. That's my Star Trek knowledge as it stands. So a reasonable idea, but by no means a huge fan. Like I've not even seen any of the full shows incomplete.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where even if I hadn't seen it, it's like I know the basics of all of them because it's Star Trek, and who doesn't at this point?
Yeah. So we're going to be working our way through it, and it's going to be casual. It's not going to be a binge watch type thing. Like I say, one a week, maybe 2 or 3 once we get to quiet months, that kind of thing. Because we have the option; it's there. We can just do it as much as we want, basically. And if we've got busy schedules, we can drop it for a week or 2 and come back to it with not much, fallout from it. It's easy. We can, there's no deadline to hit with these episodes, so that's cool. But we're going to generally try and hit this once per week, and keep going with it. So hopefully you'll want to join along if you've not seen Star Trek before, or even if you have, enjoy the discussions. And these are a little bit different from our usual reviews, mainly because there's no, like I said earlier, there's no overarching plot. They're all very standalone episodes, so I think the discussion will be slightly different, maybe a little bit shorter than usual as well as a result.
Yeah, I mean, often we speculate about what could be coming next, what these things have impact on our characters, whereas here that's not such an issue.
Yeah, this is very standalone stories. They're essentially all short movies, and for lack of a better term. So, but let's get into the first episode, The Man Trap. So this is way back in September of 1966. So we're only 40,
50 something, surely.
not 50 something yet. Oh, it's 50 years this year.
Yeah, well, no, just got 60. We're 2017 now.
Oh yeah, 50. My math has deteriorated since high school. I do apologise. But anyway, the plot of this one is that, as a lot of episodes of Star Trek, they're here on a planet to, I think they're doing medical checkups on the couple that live here, a scientist and his wife, and it's the woman's someone who McCoy knew years ago, 12 years ago, I think was the exact term.
Yeah, and it had some sort of romantic involvement with, by the seams of it.
Yeah, so they go down to check on them, and the plot conceit here is that the wife, Nancy, is appearing differently to all the different men. We have Kirk, McCoy, and a red shirt. He's not actually in a red shirt. They've not started putting them in red shirts, the ones who die. but he's a red shirt in spirit.
Yeah.
Just because he's wearing blue, he's still a red shirt. Because he's there to advance the plot and die.
Yes, exactly.
That's exactly what he does. So, and it turns out she's an alien species, of course, who lives off salt. She drains the salt from her victims, and she's a shapeshifter. She can change to different people, and eventually she gets up on the Enterprise and walks around as various crew members, including McCoy, and it leads to a lot of wonderfully awkward little moments. Connor,
You know,
oh,
I'm
right,
just gonna pick apart her ability just a touch.
go for it.
I mean, I'm not sure why I'm bothering. It's such a gimmicky thing, but the whole thing is she shapeshifts into a different person.
But when we first meet
Right.
her, she's appearing as 3 different people at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But then they just kind of forget about that and just go with it and change.
It would be fine later on if, like, she went back to doing that in one scene, but she never
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just like, okay, now it's actual shapeshifting by the look of it.
Yeah, it is, because there's a lot of traditional just sort of fades between the two people. Where they lock the camera
Yeah.
off. In fact, there's one that's really funny when it's towards the end of the episode when McCoy comes into the bedroom, or when the monster as McCoy comes into the
Yeah,
bedroom.
and it just freezes.
The frame freezes for a good 2 seconds before it fades.
There was like half a second where I went, "Is my picture frozen?"
Yeah, I know.
It goes on just that bit longer than you'd expect.
Yeah. No, we don't mean to, obviously, it's a show from the 60s. We're not going to make fun of the visual effects every...
I think that one
week.
stood out more though because the others had been smoother transitions,
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
that one felt longer.
Yeah, the others had been fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're simple tricks, but they were working well enough, whereas this one did this weird pause. And I imagine it was probably because either McCoy, or I say McCoy, the actor, DeForest Kelly, or the actress playing Nancy, one of them maybe moved incorrectly, so the fade didn't work properly, so they had to pause it
Yeah,
to make
probably.
it work. That was probably why it happened. But so that's there. Speaking of effects that are kind of weird, I did think there's a whole scene when Kirk and Spock beam back down to the planet, and this is when the monster's on the ship, sneaking about as different people. They go to get the husband, and the husband's aware of what the monster is and all the rest of it. And he basically takes a little stand on the top of this hill, and there's some rocks around, and there's kind of a stone structure,
Like an archway.
an archway, yeah, that's sort of randomly sitting there. This entire scene I thought was amusing, because, again, older shows, so they have simpler sort of filmmaking techniques where it's just like they lock off the camera and they'll do a lot of things in one shot. But there's this shot sort of looking down at the area, and we see Kirk sort of crawl around and then like sneak out from one fake rock to another fake rock, and it's very cartoon. It's very Scooby-Doo, the way
It
he kind of
is.
sneaks from point A to point B to point C, and that was really funny. But the thing that I was wanting to point out though is he's hiding behind one of the pillars at one point of this archway, and it's like there's 3 like legs to it, and we see that the husband's got a gun or a laser or phaser or whatever you want to call it. Phaser would probably be the correct term in this case.
Yeah.
And we're on a shot with Kirk and Spock hiding behind 2 of the pillars, and there's a pillar in the middle, and the husband's beam hits the pillar in the middle, and it proper blows up. Like the entire column just shatters and falls apart. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, he's got that set off a high. Like that,
Yes, doesn't he?
that would have eviscerated one of them had it hit them.
Well, to be fair, they do say he's just trying to scare him and not shoot him. That's pretty why he shot at the other pillar.
That's a good point. That's a good point. That was me thinking he was just a crap shot.
I'm just giving them a little bit of defense here.
Yeah, Kirk did say, to be fair, he did say that he's just trying to like scare them. He's using scare tactics. So yeah,
Yeah.
That's fair. So that was probably the most action-packed scene of the episode.
Yeah, riveting.
Well, it is.
It is. I'm saying that, but it's not bad.
It's this weird thing watching old shows like this, especially Star Trek, where it is so. Whenever they're on the planet, you can clearly see the backdrop is just a painting or whatever.
Yeah, the map paintings.
The map paintings, and it's clearly a set and all the rest of it. But you suspend your disbelief because it does feel like it's got this naive charm to it.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like you're a kid and you're just imagining things that are other places. And this is kind of that on a bigger scale in a time, and they did the best they could at the time with what they had.
Yeah, and it's very admirable effort.
Yeah. That's not to say there's not the odd thing that is kind of funny or whatever now because we're used to other things. I think the bigger thing that it suffers from a little bit from a modern sensibility is pacing, because the
It's
episodes
very slow, isn't it?
the episodes are 10 minutes longer than what a typical network TV show would be now. And I do think you feel it. I think it's paced at a much slower rate, which isn't necessarily always a bad thing, but there's a lot of contemplation. There's a lot of there's scenes where Kirk's just eating some fruit or vegetables.
Yeah, there's many scenes of sitting around a table just kind of doing nothing.
Yeah, and they'll let lines breathe, and sometimes that's good, but so, it adds up a little bit if you're doing it constantly. And it's not a complaint. I don't want to. There's like
it's something of the time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of these things like the special effects where we're not really going to comment it on every week. We're doing it kind of in this one because it's the first episode, but it's just kind of a product of its time, and you have to get into the mindset as you're watching it to sort of. And you do, like, once you've watched a few of them, you do kind of slip into, what the pacing's like, what the.
Yeah, like that's just something of the time. There are actual flaws, like the long transition of the the shape shifting, where that one was clearly different to the rest, so it sticks out. That's why we mentioned that one particular rather than the effects itself in general, because mostly you just kind of go with it, whereas that one felt off for itself.
I'll tell you though, there was one moment in this episode that made me laugh out loud funny.
Oh yes, there was.
And so the monster's taking shape of Nancy, and this is towards the end of the episode when she's still trying to trick McCoy, because McCoy's got feelings for her and he's not ready to believe what's going on. And she's about to kill Kirk, and McCoy's kind of letting it happen because he's confused, he doesn't know what's going on. And Spock comes in, and Spock takes the monster, who is still looking like Nancy, the wife, so sort of average height woman kind of thing. She's older as well. She's like
maybe early 60s, late 50s. I don't know.
He starts to hit her, and it's not the hitting itself that's funny.
It's not a punch or
no. It's I don't even know what you call it. It's one of these. It's where
two-fisted kind of pummeling.
Yeah, you put your hands together like this, and he hits her back and forth, side to side, and she just stands there because she's not really a young. I say young. She's not really a small woman. She's actually a big monster. She can take the hits, and she's barely reacting to it. But it's actually really funny watching Leonard Nimoy put all of his energy into these big swings.
Yeah, and then she just kind of does a backhand, and he goes flying across the room.
Yeah, that whole thing was really funny.
It was.
It was all like you'd almost worry if you told me what that scene was beforehand. Like, oh, is this going to be uncomfortable because it's like a man beating up a woman like that? And it's no. She stands there and takes it, and it is really silly.
Yes, it is.
But I laughed, and I'm okay with laughing.
I am too. I mean, it's one of those things that I'm not entirely sure how funny it's meant to be.
I don't think it was meant to be funny.
I think part of it's meant to be funny. The idea that he's hitting the woman in front of McCoy who thinks it's, a person. So I think that side of it is meant to be funny.
Okay, all right.
But the exaggerated action of it is perhaps not. And that's funny from our modern sensibilities.
Now, it sounds like we're picking on all the things that don't work. There's actually a lot of things that do work. I think the chemistry between the cast is all there. You have... Right from the get-go, McCoy is, bantering.
Sarcastic.
Yeah, sarcastic. He's bantering with Kirk, and he cracks a joke about, oh, is that who you get women to fall for you and all that at the start? And they're just playful banter. Spock's doing his thing. What I think is really interesting is that there's a scene in this, and this is, for all intents and purposes, the first episode, even though I don't think it aired first.
I don't think it did.
Like I say, airing is weird. But this one kind of works as a first episode. In some ways it doesn't, but in some ways it does. In the shapeshifter going around the ship introduces us to a lot of characters, and it actually lends itself to meeting Sulu for the first time, who wasn't on the bridge at first. He was in his plant area, his botany lab, or whatever you want to call it. And he introduces to a bunch of characters, and that all works. But we also get a nice little scene explaining Spock and what it is to be a Vulcan. Not to a super extent, but funnily enough, it's Uhura who comes over to him and tries to make small talk, and tries to get him to almost start flirting just for the sake of having some interaction.
Yeah.
And it's almost funny now because they ended up making them a couple in the new movie, but in the original series that was never, I don't think it was ever there. I've not seen season 3 yet, but
yeah,
I don't recall it, but it's actually almost funny. It's almost like they watched this scene and went, you know what, that'd work.
But I do wonder if, like I say, we don't think this was the first episode, but obviously they've chosen to make this the first one in terms of all these iterations now.
Yeah, these
I
days,
wonder
yeah.
if these are the reasons that it does introduce you to everyone, and you get a sense of location for the ship and who
Yeah.
everyone is and their roles.
That's true. Although at the end of the episode, though, when they're flying away and they look out their screen, their viewfinder,
Viewport.
yeah, it's looking at the back of the ship because you see the feet, the legs, things.
That's a good point.
I don't know why it was doing that.
Maybe they have a camera on the back.
True. I've never gotten the impression that I've always got the impression that it's looking forward, and it usually is.
It is, but I mean, we know they can have messages pop up on these screens, like from various people. We see Sulu do it at one point.
It's actually one of the weird novelties again of watching a show that's envisioning the future that's so old, is all the things they just couldn't have thought of doing. Like the idea that he has a little phone thing that he flips out and talks to when you watch a modern movie, even set in present day, earpieces and things like that, just simple little, some sci-fi shows won't even have that. It's embedded in their head. They just go do.
Yeah, but for its time, it's so ahead.
Yeah, you think about it, in the 60s, you show them a cell phone and they're like, what?
Exactly. And so now it's a little bit dated, obviously, in that sense, but it's still impressive.
It's one of the things I actually really like about the new movies, for whatever their faults are, is that they insisted on keeping a lot of the clunky tech, despite the fact
just to
that
keep the the spirit of the universe.
Yeah, I think where it falls flat a little bit though is the speed of the doors feels really slow. I don't know if you noticed this. Whenever the doors slide shut, they always go once they get slow down as they get closer to the middle. So they sort of go.
To be fair, I know a lot of automatic doors in general do that as a safety feature in case it doesn't register a leg or a foot there, so it doesn't crush them.
That's fair. It just feels slow on camera though, is what I'm.
Yeah.
What I'm getting
but just in general, that's not an unusual thing. So I get it.
Fair, but it feels slow on camera.
Yeah.
But hey, but anyway, plot wise, did you enjoy this episode, Connor?
Yeah, it was fine. It was very simplistic. It was monster on the ship.
I think I feel like a very typical Star Trek episode. It didn't blow me away. It wasn't one of the ones you remember specifically, I don't think. So it's certainly out the I've seen season 1 and 2 before. This is not one of the ones that I remember well.
No, me either.
But yeah, like you say, there's a monster on the ship. They track it down and they fight it and they shoot it with their phaser, and there you go. That's
and in the first episode, that's kind of all you want, because you're learning who the characters are and how they interact with each other. So you don't necessarily need a super compelling plot.
It's funny, for as forward-thinking Star Trek was, there is still a couple of moments where you go, oh yeah, this is kind of dated in the way it's treating this scene. The one that sticks out to me is, not that you would never see this today, but at least today, if you've seen this, it would be, oh, that was a really douchebag character, whereas I'm not sure it's meant to play that way in this. There's a scene with Janice when she's delivering food to Sulu, and she runs out of the two crewmates, and the monster's there disguised as one of the other crewmates, and he says, "Oh, look at that! Wouldn't you like to?" Something I can't remember what the end of the line was, but they're sort of eyeing her up, and it felt very old school, like.
Yeah, low key sexism.
Yeah, look at that.
Again, it's not excusing it, but that's the 60s. There's no changing that.
Yeah, but that's kind of my point though, is that the 60s, this otherwise in the 60s was very forward moving. Yeah, it was very progressive. So I think that's worth pointing out. But no, some fun goofy moments. The plot with the monster, as we said, it's a little inconsistent as to what the monster's powers are. It changes its rules just a little bit.
Yeah.
But it does at least establish some other rules though. The whole idea of it wants salt. Yeah,
and it gives you it furthers the cast itself. Like, it tells us about McCoy and his prowess as a doctor recognizing or whether or not this was a specific type of plant poisoning.
Yeah, I actually really like the scene where they've got the body of the crewmate that died, and he's like, this doesn't make sense. By all accounts, he should be alive. He should get up and walk away. There's nothing wrong with him.
Yeah.
Real simple. Actually, my favourite scene of the episode is once they get the husband on the ship, and they go to a meeting, and it's the monster's McCoy. The monster's looking like McCoy, and he's at this meeting, and Kirk and Spock are there, and the husband's there, and it's every time Kirk says something like, "Oh, could you recognise the monster regardless of who it looks like?" And the shot has McCoy as the monster as McCoy, and then the husband side by side in the frame, and you see like McCoy's eyes like getting nervous, like, can he recognise me? Does he know it's me? It's probably the best scene of the episode, actually. Just in terms
It is, because it doesn't even explicitly like tell you that this is McCoy, like necessarily. Like it could have been a real McCoy, or it doesn't explicitly tell you that it's the monster. But then it's those subtle moments in the acting, which perhaps is, again, we typically expect not much in the acting from this time period on TV.
Which I think is actually selling the cast in this really short. I think,
And I do as well, because I think that like it is moments like that. It is subtle, but it very much sells you exactly
I
what
think
it
you're
is.
right. At the start of the scene, you don't know if it's the monster, but I think as soon as his eyes start moving around, you're like, no, it's him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
beforehand, it doesn't tell you. It lets his small moment of acting tell you exactly what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and Shatner's great. I mean, Shatner gets a lot of crap, but Shatner commands that screen.
Do you know what? I don't understand it. Sometimes it's cheesy, sometimes over the top, but that's what it calls for a lot of the time in this show, and I think it's fun.
He is fun. He like I say, he commands the screen, and his witty one-liners, the way like he mocks people, like when the ship that they're meant to go to this planet next or this space station next, and they call her Uhura, and she's like, "Oh, they're wanting their shipments. They're desperately needing these shipments." He's like, "They'll get their was it chilies or something like that? Peppers?
Yeah,
Red peppers,
hand-picked peppers or something.
yeah." And he's like, "Oh, they're the finest peppers in the world, right from whatever place. I picked them myself. They can go a couple of days. They're perfect."
Yeah. He does have a lot of presence.
Yeah, presence. That's a good word for it. And I think as we watch the show, we'll talk a lot about the core trio of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy and how their chemistry kind of. And there's obviously Hura, Sulu, Chekhov comes in season 2. I think that's when he comes in.
Yeah.
Like that's they're all
Scotty.
good. Scotty as well, of course, who's not in this episode.
Yeah.
And they all come in and they're all good and they develop a little bit. But it's that core 3 that are the heart of the show, and that'll be once you get McCoy and Spock bantering and debating and
They are my favourite pairing by far.
Yeah. So, I guess that's episode 1 of Star Trek. This has been already cancelled. Of course, we're working our way through one a week, sometimes more if it's quite a week. Although, admittedly, we're probably talking about summertime before that happens. We are also going to be doing Twin Peaks. That episode 1 of that will be up soon as well. So, hopefully, some of you'll join in with us and watch along and have some fun with this. So. And I've always wanted to work my way through all the Star Treks, or at least this, Next Gen, and Deep Space Nine, because those are meant to be the good ones. But if we get to that,
we need an excuse because we do so much other TV that we don't get enough time to actually sit down and watch TV for ourselves, really.
And once Twin Peaks is done, it opens up the opportunity to pick other old shows and go through other avenues. I've got a few in mind that I really want to do. And
that said, if you have any suggestions, feel free to throw them in the comments and we can always consider them.
Typically, we're going to try and do things that we've not seen because, not for this show, but for others, it does help with speculation and we get to have fun. That said, there's some of my favourites that I would love to do something for one day in some way. I don't know what we'd do, but...
We'll worry about that later.
Yeah, we'll worry about that later.
But feel free to suggest shows. We may have seen them and it may be a case of that's just not going to work for this, but, we welcome the suggestions all the same.
Yeah. I've got a few in mind. But thanks very much for watching, guys. Let us know what you thought of this episode of Star Trek. And come back next time for the next episode, which I believe is Charlie X is the title.
It is, yes.
So come back for that. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe. It always helps a lot. And of course, the new Star Trek show, Star Trek Discovery, is coming in May, which is, partly why we're in the mood to start doing this. So thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next time. And boldly go where no one has gone before.